Good on Mia.
Yeah. Anytime you were serving tables and someone was like, thank you. Can I get some extra ketchup? Thank you. Oh, thank you. Do you mind if I can get this? Thank you. And he's always like, the more thank yous, the lower the tip. But you can't take thank yous to the bank. There's got to be more movies on serving.
Yeah.
It's the most unique job, and I worked in a restaurant for a year and a half. I served for 6 months of that year and a half, did hosting for a year, handed out pagers at the door, sat people, and just, it is a show waiting to happen. And I know that we've had a movie idea about it, but other than the show Waiting, or the movie Waiting, but they kind of made it more gross. Like, there was some gross stuff that goes on at restaurants, but not in such a devious way all the time. It felt like they were, the person's rude, so we're going to spit in their French toast. But just the actual relationships and working with the customers, like another one that we always would get, and you have to laugh, and you'll go, oh, what can I get you folks? And there's like an 8-year-old, 2 parents, and like an 18-year-old or something. And they're like, oh, we'll have 2 beers, and we can get the little one a Newcastle. And then you're like, oh, it's funny because he's 3. Haven't heard that one before.
Oh my gosh. Well, the one thing that you've told me, now hopefully this has changed, but there was one restaurant that I guess when they put the toppings on the baked potato, it's with your like bare hand, the same hand that can slide the credit cards and stuff. Do people wash their hands before doing that?
No, there's a lot of probably gross stuff in the kitchens that you see. Maybe things have changed, but when I worked, without calling out the restaurant, even though you could research and find out where I worked, but yeah, you would just top the baked potatoes, but your hands would be not clean.
That devastates me.
And then people would always pick off of the food, like you'd grab a French fry or you'd grab something off of the plate. I wouldn't really do that, but if there was something, they would call it dead. And people would eat it like a vulture. Like if someone made, we need a quesadilla, no bacon, but it comes out with bacon. And then like, oh, it's dead. They set it down and then we're vultures. And
everyone goes
gone.
And eats. Well, also too, waiters are on their feet all day. So you probably are hungry, smelling that great food.
It was the thinnest I've ever been in my entire life. I remember I went home for Christmas when I was serving, and I was so skinny, people were concerned. I was 148 pounds.
What?
Because you walk 8 hours lifting trays, and I remember I was never on a diet then, but you just walk so much as a server. I probably ate healthy, but anyway, that's our little server
Walking
rant.
really does work, though. I remember Tara said when she went to Europe that she ate and drank more than she ever had, but because of all the walking, she lost like quite a bit of weight.
Yeah, just keeping your body moving, But we'll have some more serving stories. That got me down memory lane. But we have a guest today, so I don't want to have everyone waiting here too long for our guest.
Waiting, just like the movie.
Just like the movie.
Wow, babe.
No pun intended. But yeah, our guest today is Zach Westerbeck.
Yes.
And for those of you who've been following us for a while, Zach was a guest on our show several months back, and he has an incredible story. And he's out with a book called You're Not Alone. And it's an absolute phenomenal book, and we get into his book and his story. But I want to hop into the episode now, and then we'll queue up Zach Westerbeck here in just a second. We love this guy. Welcome, everyone, to the Freddie and Alyssa Show. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, like, comment, all that fun YouTube stuff. If you're watching on Facebook, like and follow. If you're listening on a platform like iTunes, hello.
Hello out there.
Hello out there. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review if you think we deserve it. We've been putting out content now for about 3 years, over 3 years. We're having a blast, and we appreciate all of you who are on this journey with us. I want to give a shout out to some new members that we have for our membership program here. We've got Kathy Rowland. We've got Jax Anderson. Welcome to the team. Now, here's a few that I'm going to struggle with, so bear with me. Irlene Anderson, Anna Doctor, Tanya Kim Bruce, Kim Moore. Welcome everyone to the membership program. If you want to learn more about the membership program, you can click the join button on YouTube, support now on Facebook, and you get exclusive perks behind the scenes. We do a live once a month, and there's a lot of fun stuff that we put out in this amazing community. So if you want to check it out and give it a try, the link is in the description on YouTube, or you can click join, or on Facebook, it's support now. So we appreciate all of you for your support. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Zach before we cue him up, because we had a referral. The reason we met Zach was through a referral of two of our very best friends who are the most phenomenal just humans.
Shout out Mike and Ariane.
Mike and Ariane have been our friends for years. We met in business. We worked on a project together.
Traveled together.
We traveled to Thailand together, to Arizona, to Mexico. And when you travel with friends, it's your relationship goes to the next level because you get to know them a lot.
Yeah, and you really get to see how someone is when anyone's traveling, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's a really big deal. And they are just so wonderful, so easygoing. Just a pleasure to be around. So I remember, I think it was a year ago, because this is actually our second time having Zach back on the show. But a year ago, Ariane reached out to me, and she's like, there is this wonderful soul that we know. He really reminds me of, the four of us and how we are. And he's really, just getting started in life, because he's what, his mid-20s, I think?
I think he's in his late 20s. Yeah, he's a few years younger.
And she was just, singing his praises. And she's like, I don't know if you guys would be interested, but I really think he'd be a great fit for your show and your audience. And it would really, like I said, be a great fit. So we looked into him. We're like, oh, this guy is wonderful. So the first time we had him on, he shared his unbelievable story. He's just such a true testament of, the comeback story and of wanting to better yourself and going through trials and tribulations, but coming out on the other end even stronger and wanting to help other people. And that touched my heart. So I'll never forget the first time we spoke to him. I wrote Ariane, and I was like, man, he is such a special human. Like, thank you so much for the connection. And of course, this is why inner circles and who you keep in your circle are so important. Of course he was wonderful, because he was a referral from someone that we love so dearly. So just, a little food for thought. Really be so intentional about who you let into your circle, because this was a great referral. He's a wonderful, wonderful human, young man, really changing the world and putting his name in stone,
Yeah, and I love these comeback stories, because I think there's a lot of things that we inflict on ourselves, mm-hmm. and then there's a lot of things that are out of our control. And anytime something bad happens to you, or you have a challenge in life, whether you inflicted it or the world, or it just happens, you have a choice. You can either stay down, you can play the victim, or you can go through the emotional strain, the pain, the anger, the sadness, whatever it may be, and then build yourself back up. Yep. If you need help, seek help. Mm-hmm. No matter what is going on, that comeback story is what's going to make you a wiser person, a better person, because you've overcame a challenge. When life kicked you down, you got back up. And that's the same thing that happened with us in a different way. When we went through our adversity in life, as much as I would wish I could go back and never have that happen, that is what changed the course of our life forever. And that's what we relate with Zach, is that mm-hmm. and I won't steal his story because he's going to share it, but he was diagnosed with OCD in 2016. And he goes through this incredible story of his, of how, he's been able to overcome that. He's still living with it. He's still dealing with it, but he's been able to use his story to help other people who were in the dark place that he was in 2016. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how we even started our podcast, because of the car accident, because of the adversities that we went through. Learning from that growing pain, we want to share our knowledge with others, because maybe if I would have heard those stories before, maybe you'd make different decisions. So we can't say enough about Zach. We appreciate his time for coming on. His book, You're Not Alone, is incredible. It's on Amazon, and many other, you can go to his website too, that we talk about. And you can get the ebook, or you can get the soft cover if you want to read, or if there's a friend of yours who's going through anxiety or depression, or God forbid, suicidal thoughts. This is a really great resource. And I do want to say that we are going to get very deep into discussion about depression, anxiety, OCD, and even the talk of suicide in Zach's story. And I just want to let everybody know, if you're struggling, if you're in crisis right now, that there is a National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And I just want to give everybody that number, just so that you have it. It's 1-800 or 800 800-273-8255. You can also, if you're not feeling well, you can go to the hospital, you can seek help, and there's professionals that can help you. But I think it's important with mental health awareness to continue to bring this to the surface, so that, as Zach even mentions, there are people who are in our life right now that are acting brave. and they're in a very, very bad position with their mental health. And I think using this platform, using other platforms to talk about it can just bring awareness.
Yep.
And we appreciate his candid, honest, raw story and the help that he's doing. So without further ado, the author of You're Not Alone, Zach Westerbeck.
So yeah, we want to chat about you because last time we had you on the pod, you obviously, I'm sure, were writing away on You Are Not Alone, which we loved. I read it to him while we were driving cross country.
We had a 40-hour drive, and you were one of the books that we were able to consume.
Yeah.
And You're Not Alone is so awesome. Yes, man.
Man, that makes my heart pound faster. I'm honored to hear that. Thank you.
And we just ordered a copy from Amazon because we like supporting people that we believe in, and you're the man. And I absolutely, it's great. So I'm really hoping everyone who's listening to, and we're going to dig into the book, and I can't wait to ask you all about it. But to check Zach's book out, You're Not Alone. Just a phenomenal, phenomenal book. But I want to kick it off to you. And I know this is your second time back on the show. And we heard your incredible story in our first podcast with you. But in case there are new people who are meeting you for the first time, what's kind of your backstory of who you are, what got you motivated to want to write a book, to speak, to help people, and then we'll lead into your phenomenal book.
Well, first off, thank you so much for purchasing it because I'm sending you both a copy. So I can't thank you enough for supporting me, and you too. It's been amazing creating this friendship. And thank you for giving me a platform. It's people like you that give me the opportunity to spread mental health awareness. And at the core of everything I do, I'm just trying to spread hope. And I'm reminded of my story because ironically, there is a gentleman in Florida right now, in Orlando, Florida, who is beginning to experience the onset of the same symptoms, exactly the same symptoms as I am. And he is grappling with the same challenges. And if I tear up, forgive me, but he's severely depressed, extremely anxious, and he's suicidal. And he right now I'm his peer support. I'm not clinically trained, but I'm here for him right now because he'll text me once a day or call me and he's like, man, I'm scared. Like, I don't know what to do. And the people around him don't understand what's going on. And that's part of the challenge with where we're at with mental health right now, and why I am tirelessly trying to spread the message of awareness, because this man is, but whatever your beliefs are, I've never gotten tied up in that. But for a lot of Americans, religion is important. Well, he's a religious man. He goes to church. He was going to grad school to get additional education. He worked with the, and I don't want to offend anybody, I don't know what the correct term is, but he worked with the special needs children at the school that he worked at. That's what he did. That's what he was passionate about. And his life has been derailed because of the onset of OCD, this brain disorder. And he was going to be doing so much good for the world. And it really breaks my heart that there are millions of people around the world that take their lives because they're in a place of so much hopelessness and they can't get the help that they need, that they don't even know where to begin. And we lose amazing people every single day. So I know I just came in and dropped a bomb, but you all are in Orlando, Florida. This is touching people everywhere. And we need to spread this information. And so a little bit of background on me for everybody that's tuning in for the first time is that in 2016, I started to experience the most crippling emotions of my entire life. And I was reminded of that story. I was doing a podcast on Sunday of how it felt like my brain had been hijacked. And initially it was these physical, tangible symptoms that I could feel. It was a pounding heart. It was sweaty palms. It was a dry mouth. It was racing thoughts. And I literally started to feel like I was losing control of my brain. And my mother, God bless her. I mean, I literally posted about her on my Instagram story not too long ago because she spent countless hours on the phone with me as I grappled with what was starting to unfold in my brain. I was confused. I was lost. I was scared. And I had no idea what to do. And she got me through that early time period. But as I started to experience these symptoms in early 2016, a second set of emotions crept in, which you all know about, and any new listeners are going to hear about now, and that was depression. And for anybody who's listening who's experienced depression, you know just exactly how crippling that emotion can be. And in a matter of a couple of months, my world was completely turned upside down. And I went from this happy-go-lucky, just this guy that had such a zest for life and just always wanted to pour his best into other people, to somebody who was severely anxious, deeply depressed, and had absolutely no clue what to do next. And I spent the next couple of months in an all-out war with my brain. And I was doing two things really, really well during this time period. The first of which is I was hiding from the outside world what was happening to me. So all of these new coworkers, all these new people who kind of knew me as this, like, because when I came down there, down to Raleigh, North Carolina to start my first job, I brought all of the culture of college with me. So I was just like, I just wanted to have fun, you know? And all of a sudden it's like, there's two Zachs. There's the person that you're seeing in front of you, and then there's the guy that's right now battling what's going on in his head. And so I was hiding from the outside world what I was going through, and I was denying to myself that my brain health was deteriorating at a rapid pace. And within a matter of months, I was thinking about suicide from the moment I woke up until the moment I went to bed. So to give you an example, you and I could be sitting in a meeting right now, and you're trying to talk to me about sales figures and how we're going to pivot into this sector of the market and how we need to upsell and cross-sell and stack products on top of each other. And I'm trying to listen to you because I'm 22 years old, trying to make a name for myself inside of this company. Meanwhile, my brain is telling me to go kill myself.
Wow.
Meanwhile, my brain is telling me, you're so depressed. How the hell did this happen? How did we get here? What do I need to do? Scramble, panic. Just constant population of thoughts. And by the way, this is happening to millions of Americans across the country right now. And so everything came to a head one night when I came home, and I was standing on the fourth story balcony of the apartment that I lived at. I had two other roommates, and it was this one moment in the day where I would wake up, or where I would come home after just slugging through a day of just battling my brain. And I would stand on the balcony and I would watch the sunset, you know, over the humble Raleigh skyline. And, you know, they'd say Raleigh's got cotton candy skies. It's so true. I mean, those sunsets are absolutely breathtaking. And so for 10 minutes, it brought me this peace. And this particular night, I was standing on the balcony overlooking the parking lot below and the sunset in the background. And I put my hands on the railing and I looked over the edge, just looking around. And a thought populated in my head, which was, if you throw yourself off the balcony right now and go face first, you can probably get the job done. You can probably complete suicide. And keep in mind, it was happening at a much faster pace than this, but you can end your misery. And I let go of the railing and I fell back into my apartment and I started to bawl. I cried for probably about an hour. At that point, I didn't care if my roommates walked in and saw me. I was broken. And what scared me the most about this particular moment was not that I had had suicidal thoughts, because I'd been battling those for so long and I'd always met them with a lot of resistance and a will to live. And for the first time, when I started to think 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, if I was going to feel this way, then it's not what I signed up for. It's not what I wanted to do. And if I had to end the suffering, then I would. If I had to take matters into my own hands, then I would. If there wasn't a way out, if I couldn't fix it, then I would. And so I called my parents through choked up tears and I told them what I was going through. And that was the first time that I got help. They suggested I call somebody. And so the next day I started dialing around for psychologists in the area. And it took me a little bit of time. And I talk about this in the book, but I eventually was matched up with somebody who knew what was going on with me. And in late 2016, I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD, where the core symptoms are severe anxiety, deep depression, and thoughts of suicide. And I immediately started talk therapy, which is for OCD is exposure and response prevention, ERP. It is the one and only most proven, scientifically proven way to overcome symptoms that are specific to OCD. So if for anybody listening, if you think you have OCD-like symptoms, do not listen to the charlatans out there that want to do all these other things to you. ERP, ERP, ERP. It's the only way. And they talk about, yeah.
Oh, not to interrupt you. No, I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
so can you give maybe like an example? So with ERP, like what are some of the, like, what are some of the things that you did? You're probably going to get there, but I was just curious.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. So with OCD, with obsessive compulsive disorder, essentially at the core of it, and there's different genres of it, but the genre that I was dealing with is intrusive thoughts. So you have these thoughts that are counterintuitive to how you see yourself in the world. And OCD is an anxiety disorder. So these thoughts create heightened levels of anxiety. And because you don't resonate with the thoughts and they don't know scientifically why this happens, it creates feelings of depression. And if it goes untreated long enough, creates suicidal thoughts as well. And so somebody with OCD will do compulsions to combat the thoughts. And they don't know why they're doing the compulsions, but ultimately why they're doing them, until you learn about the brain disorder, is to decrease those feelings of anxiety and alleviate those thoughts. And so what ERP aims to do is, ironically, expose yourself to the thoughts, because somebody who's having OCD like thoughts is doing everything they can to get them out of their head. But that tug of war, actually, and it's a losing battle, trust me, I know, is what intensifies the thoughts over time. And so ERP deliberately exposes the individual to the thoughts and then forces you to sit in that anxiety without compulsing. And what ends up happening over time is the brain habituates to these intrusive thoughts. What I liken it to is public speaking. So many people can relate to this. The first public speech that you get, look, and I'm a public speaker. At the beginning of every season, because the summer's a bit of a lull, once I come back into the season, my first speech, I feel like I'm about ready to pass out and faint. But by the 12th, 13th, 14th speech, I'm not phased at all. I'm not nervous one bit before the speech because I've habituated. My brain has learned and trained itself that this isn't a threat. This isn't something that I need to worry about. And so that's what ERP aims to do.
I definitely see people in my life that I'm a little envious of that don't seem to ever have, and not playing it off. There are people who literally have zero anxiety. They're just cool as a cucumber, like all the time. But do you feel that there are severe cases, but then also the average person dealing with anxiety could have a little OCD, or is that not correct?
That's a great question. So, my friends, and I know that they're trying to relate, will say, well, I think I have a little bit of OCD too, man. And I know that they're trying to relate to me. And so I never chastise them and I never get upset. But OCD has a distinct set of characteristics and a distinct set of symptoms that manifest themselves every time. I can talk to this man in Florida about everything that he's going through. And on the other end of the phone, he goes, man, I'm about to stop talking to you. I'm like, why? He's like, because I feel like you know me and I just met you. Because I can tell him, I can talk about every little thing that he's experiencing and going through without having met him. So OCD has a distinct set of characteristics and symptoms that replicate themselves over and over and over again. And somebody who's meticulous or experiences a little bit of anxiety or does need that additional bit of clarification on a question, and they do go down the rabbit hole a little bit, that might be a heightened sense of anxiety, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's OCD.
So then what would be an example then of like a compulsive thought that someone, like if they do need an answer, like what's an example? Like they need an answer to what, and then how do you expose that in therapy then? So
Absolutely. So I will warn that we'll be getting into a little bit of the weeds here because it's hard for people to understand, but there's a lot of different genres of thoughts. So there's contamination OCD, which is the fear, which is why you see people compulsively wash their hands, compulsively sanitize areas. they're not doing it because they like things to be clean. They're doing it because they have a fear that they're going to get sick from some disease. And they can't stop ruminating on those thoughts. And so it drives them to the point of washing their hands until they're raw. And what ERP aims to do is say, for an example of an exposure could be, you're going to go touch that door handle. And after you touch it, you're going to hold on to it for 60 seconds. And after you hold on to it for 60 seconds, you're not going to wash your hands. You're just going to sit in it. And for somebody with contamination OCD, which by the way is not the genre of intrusive thoughts that I have, but doesn't mean it couldn't. The brain switches. As soon as you habituate to one, it finds something else. Will cause extreme anxiety, and their mind will race. Well, what if I get sick from this? What if I get this disease? What if there was some sort of germ on it? What if it was COVID? What if it, just trying to be relevant to now, because I know a lot of people with contamination OCD are struggling with COVID-19. And they sit in that anxiety and it spikes up. But by not compulsing and doing that exposure over and over again, so going back the next day and touching that door handle for 60 seconds and not washing their hand, what the brain starts to habituate to is that door handle, I'm looking at mine right now, isn't going to get me sick. And you start to build an acceptance around uncertainty, because at the core of OCD sufferers are trying to be certain that they won't get sick from the door handle, that they won't harm somebody. That's another genre. Another is religious and scrupulosity, so that they won't be a sinner in the eyes of God. For others, it's sexual orientation, where people literally question their sexual identity, where they might have been identified as straight their whole life, and when OCD kicks in, they question whether they are straight or homosexual, and it torments them. And their compulsions are searching online constantly, trying to find the answer to definitively knowing whether or not you're straight. And it drives people to the point of severe anxiety, deep depression, and thoughts of suicide, until you begin ERP and start to habituate to whatever thoughts you have in your brain.
This is so fascinating, because I feel, and we're online a lot, we're around a lot of people. Our job has brought us to meeting thousands and thousands of people. It's so interesting. Our last conversation and this one, even so far, I feel like I'm learning something new that is so common, but yet it's never talked about. I'm completely oblivious to, everything other than when, I feel like sometimes OCD gets that stereotypical, like you're saying, the touching the door.
You're a perfectionist. Yeah.
It kind of seems like that is what but you don't know like the actual serious problem. And that's what I love about your message and sharing your story, because it really, it's going to help the world. It's going to help people. And that's what I love too, just about bringing awareness to mental health. Because wasn't it Mental Health Awareness Week not too long ago?
It was.
Last week.
And
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it was. Yep. That's right. Last week.
And has that always been, like, what has been your progress leading up to and I want to know too, what was the seed of you being like, I want to write this book? Was it something that ever since 2016, 17 that you've thought of doing? Is it the mental health awareness that has become more popular? I know we have a long way to go. How does that all intertwine with you, and what led you to writing your book?
So I remember the distinct moment clear as day. And this is common. A lot of people that are struggling from anxiety or depression or the onset of a brain disorder think that they just need to get into a different space. I just need to go on a road trip. I just need to do this. I need to do that just to get away. They almost feel like they can leave their brain back at home. And if they escape, they'll have this new brain. And once they go back, they'll have to deal with it, but they can get away from it. So for me, I flew out to California with my now fiance, Kate, which I'd love for you two to meet her eventually. Hopefully, maybe we'll make a trip to Florida. You never know. And so we flew out here to visit some buddies who live in LA. And I just remember the entire time that I was out here, I was in complete and total agony. And funny enough, Chance the Rapper's album Coloring Book was out. And that's like, when I hear that album, it's like, it brings me so much nostalgia, because it reminds me of how far I've come. And I was in complete and total agony, trying to act like everything was fine. and I was sitting at the in the terminal on my plane, getting ready to fly back to Raleigh. At this time, Kate and I were in separate states, so she was flying back to New York, 2 different flights. And I just remembered I was sitting there, and I had this thought. I was like, if there was a surgery where they could literally carve out the top of my head, pluck out my brain, and put in a new one with my consciousness, I'd take it in a heartbeat. And I remember I closed my eyes and I started crying, like tears started populating. And that's why I closed my eyes, because my heart was broken. I was upset. Like, I had gotten the diagnosis, but things hadn't gotten better. And I still was embarrassed and ashamed about it. And Kate knew, but she was learning because I was learning. So I couldn't teach her what I know now. And I promised myself on that flight back that, because I looked around and the thought that came into my head is, who else is suffering on this plane right now? Who else is suffering on this plane? Somebody's got to be, and the statistics would point to, yes, somebody else was depressed or anxious on that flight. For sure, probably anxious, probably depressed. And so I just promised myself I'd never let somebody else suffer in silence again. And I didn't know what it was going to look like in 2016. But as I started to recover, one of the underlying, two of my favorite underlying joys in life were public speaking and writing. Now, one of my best friends is a much better writer than me, but that's what you have an editing team for. But I just told myself, you know what? There's a lot of information in my head that I've learned over the last couple of years, and this is the promise that you made to yourself. So step up, fulfill the promise, and that is what was at the seed of writing this book. So I started writing this book in 2018. I started speaking in 2018, and I wanted this book to be everything I knew. I didn't want to rush it. So it's based on my personal experience, but it's research backed, the tried and true methods of overcoming anxiety and depression, and then talking about the lifestyle habits that you need to form in order to create lasting recovery. Because that's one of the biggest challenges I see now, is the mental health care space is still very fragmented, in the sense that you might show up to the psychiatrist and they just give you medication. Well, there's so much more to the recovery process. If I would have just gotten medication, I don't think, and I'm not downplaying medication, I think medication definitely has its place in the recovery process, but there's so many other components. There's the talk therapy that is so critical, and in my opinion, the most important piece. There's implementing lifestyle changes. There's exercising your brain through meditation. And so there's just so many different things that people need to be thinking about. And that is all packed into this book. And really, that's kind of the inception of why I started writing it.
That is incredible. I love too how even in the book you had that Drake lyric pertaining it to therapy. It is what it is.
Yeah.
You get what you give, because so many people will try therapy and then you try it once or twice, like, I'm good. And then you have your whole set of issues again. So please.
So thank you for bringing that up. And that lyric has an important part in my life, because when I was bumping that song, I was in a part of my life where I was straddling the fence between wishing I was the old way, the old Zach, and grappling with the fact that old Zach was never coming back. There is no pill. There is no surgery. There is no brain transplant. You have obsessive compulsive disorder, man. It's a chronic brain disorder. You've been told that, and you know that you can get your life back on track. You don't know exactly what that life back on track is going to look like on the other end, but you know that ERP, that talk therapy, is what's going to get it done. It is what it is. You get what you give. Like, either you start doing this therapy the way that you've been told to do it, or you're going to stay in this place forever.
So then ERP therapy, is that something that you continue to do throughout life, or is that something that you really focus on? You have to continue.
It is for OCD sufferers and for people that live with chronic brain disorders. I can only speak to OCD at an intimate level, because that's what I've experienced. But there are individuals that struggle with schizophrenia. One of my favorite brain health advocates, Brandon Staglin, who is I want to say he's director level or above, but the Staglin family started the One Mind Foundation, which is a nonprofit that focuses on mental health awareness and research and development in this space. to really begin to find better forms of treatment. But anybody who's living with a chronic brain disorder in today's day and age is going to have to continue their therapy throughout life. And anybody who's struggling with depression or anxiety, maybe it flares up at time periods, but you should always be getting therapy. I'm biased, but I think everybody should have a therapist that they see once a year, the same way that we do with general practitioners. We know to go get a full body checkup. Why don't we check up on our brains at least once a year? What's the state of your emotional health?
I love that.
Well, it seems like it's everything, the mind, body, the soul. I mean, you have to continue to work out. You can't just get ripped once. If that were the case, I'd still have a six.
I know.
So it's like a thing that you have to keep doing. And then I always look back at, I'm always curious, just hundreds of years ago, if it was environment, if it was like, have you heard stories, do you know from research, was anxiety, depression, OCD, this stuff, was this around forever? And then do you think just the circumstance of the world in a year like 2020 only heightens that? Or what do you think years ago compared to now? I mean, aside from the lack of awareness, do you think environment plays a part in it? This fast-paced world?
100%. That's a fantastic question. And in the OCD world, there's information out there that points to OCD sufferers as far back as the Greek philosopher days, reporting humans struggling from these intrusive thoughts and them trying to find all these different ways to treat them. And it absolutely breaks my heart, because back then there was no treatment. I mean, there is now. This treatment, by the way, is brand new. I mean, it's only been around for a few decades. So like every day I count my blessings, because otherwise I don't really think I would be here. But I mean, look at Abraham Lincoln. I mean, back then they called it melancholy, but he struggled with depression on and off his entire life. And so it's really important. I certainly think that the circumstances that we find ourselves in 2020 have exacerbated those symptoms or brought those symptoms out in more people. But that's because our brain health is a continuum. It's something that we all fluctuate back and forth on based on different factors in our lives. For one, our genetics. Science right now is starting to point to the fact that we have these genes that lie dormant in the body, and based on different traumatic factors, they can be activated. And I told you guys this in the last podcast. That was the case for me, and that's the case for all OCD sufferers. But I think that we're starting to learn more and more that genetics plays a huge factor. And I love that, because it's like, all right, this isn't a moral deficiency or a lack of strength or character. This is a medical condition. The other things that bring it out are the daily stresses of life. We have more coming at us than ever before. Now, granted, life is easier than it's ever been, but we've complicated our lives now more than ever before. And between the emergence of technology and social media and the digitization of the world, and how everything has become our lives based on this and everything that comes with this, everything dealing with the quarantine, especially now, these are all daily stressors that are going to impact how you feel. And higher levels of stress have been proven to lead to higher levels of anxiety and the onset of depression. I mean, how many people can you think of right now that might be dealing with financial stress, that might be feeling hopeless because they lost their job and they have no idea how they're going to put food on the table? They're a displaced American right now who had a certain skill set that's no longer being hired, and they've got 4 kids. And you look around and your life is hopeless. And when hopelessness pours over you, that's when you open the door to anxiety and depression. And so you've got these daily stresses, and then you've got significant events, a death, a divorce, a breakup, a major illness. All of these factors can bring out anxiety and depression in people, but we don't know that. We think that when somebody goes through a breakup, it's like it's like how Hollywood portrays it. No offense, because I know you're both in Hollywood and I respect what you both do. But a lot of times in the movies, we see it's like the rom-com, right? The breakup happens and then the person's sad. They eat some ice cream, watch the movie, they cry, and then they come back and they win the person back. Well, a lot of times it doesn't work like that at all. You go into a breakup, you fall into a deep depression, and you never go seek help, and therefore you never recover, and you carry these scars around for a very long time. There's also a lot of trauma in cycles of poverty, people who come from scarcity, people who come from traumatic backgrounds and abuse. And those things stick with you for a lifetime. And that's why I do believe that everybody should have access to, at a bare minimum, universal mental health care, where people can speak to a qualified licensed professional, because we expect a lot of people to live happy, fulfilling lives who have never unpacked their layers of trauma. And that happens through therapy.
And do you think too that for the person who's listening right now or watching, or if they pass this along and they're feeling depressed, they're feeling anxious, God forbid they're feeling suicidal, what is something that person can do right now? And then also to piggyback with that question is, what do you think, other than You're Not Alone, which I think is the perfect title of your book, what do you think the biggest takeaway for someone reading the book that they can take from it, apply? Yeah,
absolutely. Well, the first thing is that at the front of my book, you can find it here, but the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-TALK. So 8255. So they can dial that number right now if they're feeling suicidal, and they can get help. So one big myth that I want to debunk is that you're going to call into a hospital, or you're going to call into a suicidal hotline like this, and you're going to report that you're struggling with thoughts of suicide, and they're going to come find you, throw you in a straitjacket and lock you away in a mental health ward. That's not the case. They're going to refer you to resources, to therapists, to community health centers, and try to get you on the right track to recovery. So that's number one. If you are at the point where you're struggling with suicidal thoughts, please know that there are resources available right now, like the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, that you can call and it works. You can also go to your local hospital. That's the other thing that I want to call out. Like, if you call the number and you end up hanging up and you're like, I'm too scared, I don't want to do it, you can drive to the hospital as well, and they can take you in there. So that's number one. And what was the question? What can people do?
Was what I was saying too. Yeah, just what someone can do right now, like with reading your book, with following other people on social media, yourself included, just like surrounding yourself with people. I just want to give people options, because I know a lot of people do have access to the healthcare. Some people don't, but I love that there are options like the hotline, and that there are people like yourself who are leading the way. And I really love that social media is providing a space, just like the Gary V's of the world did for entrepreneurship, and the Tom Billy list goes on. I love that you're in the space of helping, sharing your story, because you're you're someone that people can look to, and you can help them, and it's free and accessible to watch your stories, to see what you're doing. It's great. So if someone does pick up your book or give it to a friend, You're Not Alone. What would you think, just to sum it all up, because we could talk for an hour, which I wish we have to have you back again.
I know, please.
We will.
What do you believe is the best thing that someone's going to get from your book by reading it?
Absolutely. So what I will say is that there are a plethora of resources at the back of the book too. So rather than rattling off every resource here, people should understand that, let's say you buy a copy of this book for somebody. Number one, you have to gauge where you're at. So if you are in crisis, you should call a suicidal hotline. If you are feeling the onset of depression, then maybe you start by reading this book and simultaneously scheduling an appointment with a psychologist in your area. And you can use psychologytoday.com and type in your zip code to find that, and it'll populate a list of healthcare providers in your area, whether they take insurance or not, whether they're on a sliding scale, which basically means that they're willing to change their prices based on your financial circumstances right now. And I'll give you a real world example. I called in to a healthcare provider. Her fees were $250. I told her that the individual who was struggling didn't have $250 per hour for a session. but would she be willing? And I explained his circumstance, all the symptoms he's going through, where he's at, and where he's at financially. Would she be willing to do it for 150? Not only did she do it for 150, she dropped it down to 100 per session. So there are healthcare providers out there that want to help. And in the mental health space, there's more love than you could ever imagine. So knowing that there's a sliding scale there. But when you read this book, I mean, ultimately, the underlying message that I'm trying to send to any reader is that there is hope for recovery. And you're not alone is a twofold meaning. The first of which is you're not alone in your struggles, in the sense that depression, anxiety, stress, overwhelm, thoughts of suicide are common amongst all of us. As human beings, when we were born, we signed up to experience these emotions at some point in our lifetime. The CDC estimates that over 50% of Americans are going to experience these emotions. That's a lot of us. So you're going to feel them at some point. Don't think you're weird. Don't think you're weak. Don't think you're different. The second thing in not being alone is understanding just how much professional help is out there. There's more help than ever before, and there's more ways than ever before to access it, whether you want to go in person, whether you want to use a community health center, whether you want to utilize telehealth. You can speak to somebody right now, just like you and I, and get the same quality, high level of treatment. But obviously I understand some people want to be in person. So it's just knowing that sowing the seeds of hope, that recovery is possible, and changing your mindset from thinking that you have to shoulder through this alone, or that you have to be stronger or braver or tougher or any of the other stigmas that we all just naturally carry. And understand that some of the brightest, most successful people in the world either inherently knew or learned through time that asking for help is the best way to find success in life.
Wow, you are such an inspiration. And honestly, thank you for just sharing your story with the world. You really don't realize how much that can mean to someone watching this right now going, wow, I'm not alone. And they're able to hear this and, you know, get help or read your book, purchase your book. That being said, do you have the book right there with you?
I do. Now I'm a little bit embarrassed because it's the proof copy. I ordered my copies on Saturday and they're not coming in until Friday. So I've got a not for resale sign on this one, but
I love it.
But it is for sale, and I'll tell you, I'll be the first one to tell you, I don't give a crap about the book sales. I literally could care less. I made the ebook 99 cents. I don't care. I'll find other ways to make money. I'll go back to work if I have to. This book is about saving lives, because there's somebody in your community, there's somebody in your social circle right now who is either trying to act brave and push through it alone, or they're right on the edge. And a read like this could unlock a whole new perspective on what it means to have mental health. So I could care less about the book sales. Buy the ebook. It's 99 cents. I don't care. I don't care about that. It's about helping people.
And where can people find the book?
So they can find it. It's in all of the outlets that you can possibly imagine, but the main one is Amazon, and that link is in my bio. If you go to www.zachwesterbeck.com and go, actually, it's on the homepage. You can click on it there. It'll route you to the book page. Then you can click on the button again, and it'll route you to Amazon. And so you can purchase the book that way.
Wow, we are so proud of you. Like, you are just getting started, and honestly, it's such a pleasure to know you. You're really, really awesome.
I really appreciate it, and same to both of you. I'm just really grateful that we've cultivated this friendship. And you know, honestly, I know Kate has some best friends in the Tampa area. Is Tampa close to Orlando?
Yeah,
about an hour and 20 minutes. Not too shabby.
Yeah. So when things clear back up, we'll make a trip out there and get to hang out and actually meet in person.
Love it, dude. Yeah, I'd love to shake your hand and have a cup of coffee or something and hang out. It'd be great.
100%.
But let us know when you venture out, and we wish you all the best. We appreciate you coming on, and then we'd love to have you back on again, because I wanted to also talk to you about your just like the process of your book and the publishing and the marketing and all that stuff. But we can probably save that for another podcast. But I would.
It's been a journey.
I can only imagine. But that's the fun thing. And you have it in your hands. And it's just so cool to have something in your mind and then to create a product and have it real.
Congrats.
Congratulations.
That's a huge feat. Huge.
Thank you. I think I'm starting to realize that it's starting to sink in a little bit. I candidly, I never thought the book was actually it never felt like it was like, all right, I've gotten one thing down and then, oh, there's this new thing I have to do. So for it to actually be out now in the world feels really good. So I appreciate that.
Awesome, man. Well, enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll have this episode out in the next couple weeks here, and I can't wait for people to see it. So we appreciate you, and we'll be stalking you on Insta for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yes, and actually on that note, I should call out that if people do want to learn more about me on Instagram, it's at Zach_Westerbeck, so they can find me there. And yeah, I look forward to talking to both of you again soon. Have a great rest of your day, and hang in there. Congratulations on the move.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, man.
We'll talk to you soon.
Have a good one.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.